So ready for our next speaker. Continuing on the topic of DAOs, we have Jorge Izquierdo from Aragon. Did I say that right? Thank you. From Aragon on building a new digital jurisdiction for DAOs. And we will have time for Q&A as well. So make sure you're kind of critically analyzing the presentation and getting ready for some questions at the end. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jorge Izquierdo. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO at Aragon One, which is one of the companies working on the Aragon project. Just a little background on what Aragon is. Aragon is a decentralized application to create and manage decentralized organizations on Ethereum. We have a pretty modular framework to build different types of organizations. So you have like some different templates so you can create the organization that you want, and you can also install different governance modules or different applications to customize the organization as you want it. It's built on Ethereum. Right now we're deployed on mainnet and also various testnets, but it's really easy to deploy to any EVM compatible chain. And right now it's available on the web. It also works on mobile, and we have a desktop app if you want a true decentralized experience of using Aragon. Right now we have more than 650 DAOs running, so that's really exciting, and around 700,000 DAI equivalent worth of assets secured by Aragon. But what I want to talk about today, it's this concept of the Aragon network that we call a digital jurisdiction for DAOs. So some of the DAOs that have been created in Aragon, they actually have like a legal counterpart to the DAO. So people are actually managing their DAO on Ethereum, but there's a legal entity that's behind that. So for example, that's how we use at Aragon One Aragon. There's a legal entity, but we also use Aragon to manage our company. But the Aragon network is used to provide services to this, how we call sovereign DAOs, that are DAOs that don't have any legal counterparty. They're just running in code. And there are a few services that real world organizations can use, such as the access to the legal system that are kind of missing in DAO. So this is the idea of the Aragon network, providing some of these services that real world organizations get, but for DAOs. And the principles for the Aragon network are, first and foremost, is fully opt-in. Using Aragon is free and has always been free. You don't need to have any token or pay anything. Your organization is fully standalone, and you control your organization fully, and that will continue to be that way. If you don't want to have anything to do with the Aragon network, that's fine. You can keep using Aragon on your own. We also have this concept of picking your own services. We don't want to push services that some organizations don't want to use. So it's like fully opt-in what services an organization wants to use. Then there's this concept of true limited liability. How organizations in land jurisdiction work is that if the organization does something bad, at the end of the day, you have unlimited liability in the way that the government can come grab you and put you in jail for the rest of your life for something that you do in the organization. With the Aragon network, there's always like a true limited liability that is collateral based. All your agreements and things that you do are based on a collateral that you put there, and then that's the maximum liability that you have. So in an agreement, there's like a certain amount of collateral, and it's not possible to get penalized for more than that. And also it's truly community governed. The Aragon network is controlled by ANT holders, and it will continue to be that way. So in terms of the first version of the Aragon network, I would argue that it's already running, and it's been running since November 2018. This is when AGP1 was passed. AGP1 established the process for governance proposals in Aragon. It was accepted with 99.97 support by ANT holders. So it was like a pretty there was no controversy around the process. And we've been running votes every quarter. So far, we've done 3 votes, and there have been 26 Aragon governance proposals that made it to the ballot. Of those, 21 AGPs passed, and 5 were rejected, and around 8.79 million DAI have been allocated with the process. Around 3.44 million ANT have been allocated with the AGP process. And so far, it's been running pretty smoothly. We've had some interesting AGPs that had a lot of controversy, but it's good that the process has been working well so far. So how does the process work? This is like kind of an overview of the life cycle. First, like anyone in the community can come up with an idea that they want to make happen, and even it can be anonymous or pseudonymous. We've had a couple of AGPs that were proposed by anonymous people and that were since then approved by the network and happened. So there are right now four tracks. One is association, that is kind of making decisions of for the Aragon Association, kind of like policies or how the association should do some things. Then we have finance, which are the easiest, which is like, okay, we want to do a finance transfer for something like finding a core team. It can also be meta, and these both require more support because these are related to changing the process itself. Or they can be a proclamation that it's like a fun way for the network, like the DAO, to say something as its own entity. And this is, for example, how the first Aragon vacation was established, like the Fight for Freedom Day, and it was the DAO that made the decision to do this. Then there's this process of having a community discussion in which like someone says, okay, I'm going to propose an AGP for doing this, and the community discusses. This usually happens around the Aragon forum, and then there's a moment when there's a draft for the proposal that gets submitted into the GitHub repo for the AGPs. Then there's a community review. This is something that has been added to the process recently. And then there's this step number 5 that I want to get into more. There's a review by the Aragon Association Board that is used as a curation process for proposals to make sure that the proposals adhere to the values of the network. And finally, if it passes this process, the AGP gets added to the next Aragon network vote, which happens every 3 months. So why do we need this Aragon Association board review for AGPs? As he said, anyone can submit any proposal at any time, and people would just be able to vote. The thing is that before AGP 1, there's this AGP 0, that is the Aragon Manifesto, that establishes the values of what the network does. Every AGP that gets passed needs to adhere to AGP 0 and AGP 1. And the thing is, like, AGP 0 is it's pretty subjective. It's like it stands for what the values of the network are, but it's really hard to, or impossible to, write that in Solidity code or any programming language. Because at the end of the day, they're values. And it's also there for preventing 51% attacks. That we will get into that later. And there's also the aspect that right now in the V0 of the Aragon network, this is like signals that are being sent to the Aragon Association, but the proposals are actually being executed by the Aragon Association. So what's this 51% attack that we were talking about? This is like the simplest 51% attack that you could propose. But yeah, the premise is in an organization with simple majority voting, someone can go and propose, okay, we're going to transfer all the funds in this organization to a smart contract that will split the funds that come in to anyone that votes yes on this proposal. This is something that has 0 cost to the attacker. If you can create a proposal, you can just submit this and create this. And it's also a pretty trustless commitment. It's like kind of sketchy that someone is saying, okay, let's steal this money from everyone among the ones that are in our cabal of stealing the money from the DAO. But it's actually pretty trustless. You just write a smart contract that will get the money and will split the funds proportionally to everyone that votes yes. So this is very dangerous in DAOs, and it's like the worst thing is that it has 0 cost. If you have a DAO in which it's permissioned and people are getting into the DAO because they knew someone, then you could have like some off-chain skin in the game in the form of reputation, and you wouldn't want to create this proposal. But if we're talking about a totally open DAO in which anyone can create a proposal, and and people can be pseudonymous, then this becomes a real concern. A simple way of preventing 51% attacks is allowing exits. And this is before a proposal is actually executed and the funds are removed from the organization. You allow people that are not in favor of the proposal to not only vote no, but say, okay, I'm going to take my money with me. So you execute that, but I'm getting all my money. The issue with exits is that it really only works if the token holders of the organization have a legal direct claim on the assets of the organization. And this might not be the case in all types of organization. If you were to create a DAO to govern, say, protocol inflation in a blockchain, like the token holders not necessarily have a direct claim of their proportion of the funds, or it could be get also complicated if the DAO is making for-profit investments that will get a return in the future. So exits don't really work well if the holders don't have just like a direct claim on the assets. Also, passive membership becomes very, very risky. Like if someone goes on vacation and doesn't see the boat going on, when they come back, they may find out that their DAO was drained. Some people were able to exit, but a lot of other people that just didn't see the boat, they just lost all their money. And also, there's a huge griefing potential because one, this attack is free to do to anyone that can propose anything to the DAO. And the issue is that if this attack were to happen, and even if everyone were able to exit, it's like a very, very weird thing that if someone attacks the governance of the DAO, the organization is basically liquidated, and then we have to create a new organization. Imagine if that were to happen with a corporation in the real world. There's an attack on the governance, and then all the shareholders take all the money, and then the company needs to be created again. It's really not scalable. But we are building one app to allow having these types of exits. This is the Dandelion's Organization Redemptions app that basically allows to do this sort of exits before a proposal is executed. It allows people to exit and take their money with them, kind of in a simple exit way. But the thing that I really want to talk about today is the approach that we're taking for the Aragon Network V1, and it's something that we call proposal agreements. Proposal agreements try to mimic fiduciary responsibilities in the organization, in the way that when you create an organization, you can set what the rules for making proposals in these organizations are. And these are not only the code that you set up the governance system for your organization and you say, okay, we're going to propose this way and we're going to have a 50% majority, but also having subjective rules for what types of proposals can be made in the organization. This is a draft of the proposal agreement for the Aragon network. It says that proposals must be made in good faith with intention to improve the network's operational efficiency, quality, breadth of service, and benefit all ANT holders in equal measure. That last part is kind of to prevent this 51% attack aspect in the way that if you create a 51% attack proposal, it will certainly not benefit all the token holders equally. Okay, sorry. So yeah, how does this work in terms of the flow? In order to create these proposal agreements, we are gonna need that the proposer that wants something to happen in the DAO needs to one, review the rules of the organization and make sure that what they're proposing actually is valid per the organization's rules. And then at the moment that they create the proposal, not only they will submit the proposal, but they will have to deposit some collateral along with their proposal. And this is their way of saying, okay, I've read the organization rules, my proposal adheres to the rules, and I'm risking this amount of money in case that the proposal is actually not valid. Then people can review the proposal, review the rules, and if they disagree that the proposal doesn't go with the rules, someone can take on the other side and say, okay, I challenge this proposal, and I'm gonna deposit some collateral and risk to lose this money if the proposal ends up being valid. And at this point is when we involve the subjective oracle that will tell us whether the proposal was valid or not, and we will get into that later. And then at this point, when the proposal is created, when the proposal is challenged, we actually stop the voting for that proposal. We pause it, and when the oracle comes back with the resolution of whether the proposal is valid or not, at that point we resume the voting and people can continue voting, or the proposal is cancelled and the voting stopped. And also at this point we give the stake and the collateral to the winning party of the dispute. So this is kind of like the more technical flow of how this works. The proposal, rather than creating the vote directly, it goes through this proposal agreement contract that will be able to create the vote or then pause it or resume it depending on the result of the oracle. So as you may be thinking, like the interesting part is what is this subjective oracle and how does this work? And for this, we're building a dispute resolution protocol called the Aragon Court. The first version of the Aragon Court, we're building it purposely for resolving these types of disputes, but it could be used for other things in the future. And the mechanism is really simple. People, like, there are jurors that want to help in deciding whether this proposal are valid or not, that stake A and T into the court through a bonding curve in order to work for the court. Their chance of being selected to adjudicate cases is proportional to the stake that they submit, and in case that they don't support, they end up in the losing side of a dispute, they can be slashed. And we're building this with the trying to make it as efficient as possible, both in, okay, we want to involve the minimum number of jurors possible and get to the final ruling as fast as possible as well. So in terms of disputes, how it works, when someone challenges a proposal, a dispute will be created in the court, and then at this point we select a number of jurors for adjudicating this dispute. They're randomly selected based on their stake, and then they have a period of time to review the case, review the evidence that has been submitted by both parties, and at that point they commit and reveal to a certain ruling. Jurors cannot share what their ruling is with other jurors. If they're caught doing this, they can be slashed and their vote will be invalid. And at this point, the votes are then tallied, and there's like a winning outcome for the ruling, and that becomes the provisional ruling for this dispute. If this ruling is not appealed, then it's considered the final ruling, and that's it. But also there's an appeals process for appealing if one of the parties doesn't think that the jurors ruled in the right way. So for the appeals, this is how the flow works. There's first the adjudication, the jurors vote, and they produce always a provisional ruling. This can be one of these two options. At this point, there are two options. If no appeals are created in a period of time, then the provisional ruling becomes a final ruling, and that's it. But there can be also an appeal, a party that says, okay, I don't agree with ruling A. I think the ruling actually should be ruling B. And at this point, they also need to deposit some collateral behind their appeal, saying, okay, I support, I think that the ruling should actually be appeal B. And here, if there's another step in which someone needs to confirm the appeal in order for another adjudication round to be created, if a period of time passes and someone has appealed and says, okay, I think this should be ruling B, and no one takes on the other side of the bed saying, okay, no, I think it should still be ruling A, as the jurors were saying, the ruling is automatically flipped and the dispute is finalized. But in case that someone takes on the other side and says, okay, I confirm the appeal, then we go back to the adjudication process and involve more jurors at this point. In order to limit the amount of time that a dispute can take, there's only a limited number of regular appeals, as we call them, that can happen. Every appeal increases the number of jurors that become involved, but after a certain number of rounds, if it's again appealed, there's something that we call the final appeal. And for this, in the V1 of the court, is going to be a simple majority vote with all of the jurors. So it's like a stake vote. There's also slashing if they don't end up in the right side, but this will produce a final ruling in the court that will be unappealable at this point. And having this, we are sure that in around a month, at the worst case, we will have a final ruling. And in the future, something that we're currently researching is using a future key market for this. So in the case that the final appeal were to be appealed, we would open a future key market saying, okay, if ruling A was the final ruling, what would be the price of A and T in X amount of time? What would be the price in case B? And then based on what the price is higher in both markets, you basically make the decision for what the final ruling is. This can only work at the latest stage when there's like a big amount of stake involved in a dispute and a big amount of attention, in a way that if the court were to make the wrong decision, the price of A&T could be impacted because there will be less fees in the future because people will lose faith in the oracle. Then in terms of settlement, it's important to know that even if we involve very few jurors in the initial rounds of the dispute, that they are sure that they should always vote not for what their local round jurors will vote for, but for what they think the final outcome will be. So in this case, we have a very simple simple dispute that has two rounds. In the first round, there are only 3 jurors involved, and then we had 1 angel voting for one of the rulings and 2 demons voting for the other ruling. So at the end of round 1, the second ruling was the one that was winning. There was an appeal, and then 5 jurors got involved. And in this case, there were 4 jurors voting for the first appeal, for the first ruling, and 1 person voting for the other one. So this wasn't disputed. This was an appeal. So we consider this the final ruling to be the first ruling. So we will go, and the 2 jurors that voted for the losing ruling get slashed, and let's say that they get slashed 1 token that gets given to the juror that voted in favor. And also in this case, there will only be one token slashed that will be split among the 4 jurors. And also this juror will get all of the fees that were generated in this round, and in the other jurors, they will get the fees that were generated in that round. And the fees are always proportional to the number of jurors that got involved in a certain round. So in terms of fees, there are 2 types of fees in the Aragon court. First, we have the dispute fees that were the ones that we were seeing before. These are always proportional to the number of jurors that are involved in a dispute, and they're always distributed to the jurors that support the winning side in a dispute. We also have this other concept of subscription fees in order to use the court. And the idea here is that if you have an oracle that works really, really well, it kind of creates incentive not to create bad proposals in the first place, because you know that the oracle will resolve against you and you will lose the stake that you created with your proposal. So if the court works really, really well, it can create an incentive not to use it because you know that works well, but this can lead to jurors stopping to use the court because they're not getting money with fees, because these dispute fees are proportional to the amount of activity and disputes that get created to the court. So this concept of subscription fees allows us to have like a constant and predictable revenue depending on how many organizations are depending on the court for their operation, and not necessarily of how many disputes get sent to the court. And this is a flat fee for everyone that is using the court for now, and this is distributed to all the active jurors during a period of time. And also some revenue gets out of that for the network itself to manage. So kind of to wrap up as a conclusion, the Aragon Network V1 will be a fully sovereign DAO that doesn't need an external body to curate proposals, because it will be able to curate proposals itself through proposal agreements. It earns fees from the Aragon Court, from the subscription fees, and we will be launching it later this year. So kind of to contribute and read more, here are some useful links of the white paper, the repo for the Aragon Court, and the Aragon chat and the Aragon forum where we do most of our research. And that's it. Any questions?
So hello, Juliana from Brazil. I have a quick question. The number of times that a dispute can be appealed, is this predetermined before the dispute starts, or they never know how many rounds they're going to have?
Yes, this is predetermined before the dispute starts. So when a dispute gets created, you have kind of what's the maximum amount of time that this can take until you have a final ruling. Yeah. So the amount of rounds is predetermined because each round takes a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Two more questions, and I've seen the people who have put up their hands. One back here.
Hey, Jorge. I actually got two questions. First one is about the topic that was in the previous talk, continuous organizations. What's your, philosophically speaking, what's your opinion on continuous organizations? What are their pros and cons in relation with the DAOs? And are they a good mechanism to fix the exits that you were speaking in the beginning of your lecture?
Sorry, what type of organization?
Continuous organizations.
Oh, continuous organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is super interesting model. We're actually going to have a fundraising module that will allow people to get in and out of DAOs in a similar fashion. So yeah, definitely interesting.
Out of interest, put up your hand if you've ever used a DAO or interacted with one. Yeah. Okay, that's a fair few. Jorge, what's the most interesting DAOs out of the 650 on Aragon?
That's a very good question. I would say that we're seeing DAOs that just seen or stats that we had no idea that people were using them for stuff that we're building in the future. So some people were doing fundraising in a way that they couldn't do in any other way, and onboarding a massive amount of users that way. Yeah, and then there's some interesting DAOs that are connecting to other protocols, so they're lending money on Compound and stuff. But yeah.
Final question.
Hello. So one question about the slashing of the jurors that rule for the losing side. If they know that the general opinion is towards one side, which incentive do they have to vote for what they think is right?
Oh, they shouldn't do that. They should vote for what they think the majority should vote.
And what's good about that?
I mean, it's the only way that we will, like, at the end of the day, you have the jurors that if you cannot encode their subjective opinion, you just have a way to very efficiently think what the majority of the population of jurors will think to get to a final ruling. But yeah, they should always vote for what they think their peers will vote. They can try to convince them in other ways, but if they still think that they will go in a certain way, they should go with that.